In the press conference room right now, in our large studio that we have here at the Capitol, it is Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick. Welcome back to the show.
Great to be with you, Chad, as always.
Yeah, glad to have you on the program. So far, how do you think the session's going?
We are in a better position on many levels than we have been since I first joined the Senate in 2007. Of course, I've been Lieutenant Governor this is now my third term. The relationship, and I heard the end of your interview with Speaker Bonin, the relationship between the House and the Senate is light years beyond where it ever was. No criticism of the former Speaker, but Dennis has a different approach. We communicate on a regular basis. I've had more meetings with Dennis in the first 2 months than I had with the former Speaker in 4 years. And the governor, we've always had a close relationship with the governor, and so the three of us are working together. And as he said it, I heard at the end of the interview, if we disagree, we're going to disagree without being disagreeable. We have big, bold plans ahead. Property tax reform is very important. School finance reform is important. Teacher pay is important. But there are other issues that we're still going to deal with. We're looking at election security, for example. I mean, we're looking at transportation, as always, health care, mental health care, particularly for our students, and school security. And it's a real pleasure to work with the House, and even to the point, Chad, that our teams are working together. So Dennis is very comfortable with his chairman meeting with our chairman. So you have both chairmen of both committees working together. And that happened some in the past, but not like today. And everyone is much more relaxed, and we're just working very hard, but we're working together.
That's great. Let's talk about one of the big issues of the day, and that is property tax reform. SB2, we know that is it's moving. It's gone through a hearing. Do you think you have the votes right now for SB2 for property tax reform?
Paul Betancourt is chairing that committee and carries that bill. I have not checked with him on the votes, but the media, not you, but the print media has been suggesting, well, we must not have the votes to move it. No, that's not why it hasn't moved. I wanted to give the House time to catch up. My strategy this session is totally different than it was in the past. We moved very fast in the Senate the last two sessions, pushing a lot of strong conservative legislation to the House. Because the former Speaker had a different view on things. So now it's not as important for us to, and we'll be leading on bills. We're going to vote out the teacher pay on Monday, for example, and a mental health care, Senate Bill 10 for young people on Tuesday. But it's more important that we try to work together. And so the House will lead on some issues, we'll lead on some issues, but it's a different pace. So I don't know where we'll land between. We're at 2.5% now, the governor's plan, which I totally support. I don't know if we'll end up there, a little above it. We can't go too far above it, Chad. Otherwise, there's no tax relief. And what we're trying to do, so that people are very clear, we have to slow down the growth. Right now, if your property taxes go up 8% a year, which many are in your listening area and all over the state, higher in some of our urban, suburban areas, big areas, it's 10% a year. Well, then you divide that into 72. So if you go up 8%, every 9 years it doubles. If we can get that down to 2, 3, I hope we don't go more than 3, 3.5. I hope we stay at 2.5. But even if we got to 4, you slow that down dramatically to where you wouldn't double at maybe every 15 or 18 or 19 years. So you slow the growth down. Then we come also in and we do something now to reduce property taxes by hundreds of dollars to start. This is a big package. We're gonna spend billions and billions of dollars to get this aligned. And let me say something, Chad, that a lot of folks may not fully understand because there's been misreporting on this. The education community says the state's not doing our fair share. We're doing all we can. 52% of our budget is education, 31% is health care, 11% public safety. So that's 94% of our budget, 3 items, education being more than half. But our sales tax, we don't have an income tax, we'll never have one. Our revenues, and we don't have a statewide property tax. It's all local. So the only thing we get are sales taxes, and they grow about 4% a year. Well, if our state is growing 4% a year in our revenues, and local property taxes are going up 8% a year, well, obviously it's a 4% gap per year, and it keeps widening. So the schools are doing everything they can, we're doing everything we can, and we're trying now to figure out how we can accomplish that a little bit better.
How do you one of the senators, Republican senators, has already come out against SB2 as it is right now. Do you think there's a way to get all Republicans on board?
Well, that senator has been against property. He voted against property tax reform last session twice.
Right.
In the regular session, special session. So look, I have 19 Republicans. I have 18 who want property tax relief, and I think the other senator does as well. I will say Charles Perry is a strong supporter of property tax reform, and I read a headline in the paper recently. It said, "New tax plan by Abbott, Patrick, and Bonin," because we all filed the same 2.5 bill, would take $900 million from cities and counties. My answer is no. Senate Bill 2 puts $900 million in the pockets of citizens, and that money gets spent, and that money creates sales tax revenue for cities, counties, and the state. So we're not. This argument that we are limiting cities and are going to have to lay off people is ridiculous. We're not cutting their revenues. Right now, cities and counties can grow 8% plus new growth. So if you're a fast growth area or you have new, growth, you can grow 10, 11, 12% your budget every year, and the voters have no say. We want to bring that down to 2.5, 3.5, wherever the number settles in. I hope 2.5. We want to bring that down to that level and say you can grow above it.
Right.
If you need more money. But you have to get a vote of the people. Today, the people have no say in their property taxes. We want them to vote. But when we're giving them, even at the 2.5% bill plus growth, so if your growth in your area is 2%, you're really getting an automatic 4.5% increase for your budget if you're a city or county. And if you need more, you go to the people and say, here's why we need more. And so we're not capping, we're trying to limit this doubling and tripling of property taxes. And for businesses, it's terrible because there's no 10% cap.
I'm visiting with Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick. Another part of property tax reform that I think just about everybody has put with this is school financing and redoing school financing. What do you think that plan will look like? When will it be rolled out in the Senate?
Well, we've rolled out, we're going to pass our teacher pay part of our plan on Monday. And that would give a $5,000 across the board raise to every teacher. Today, our college students coming out of college start at $47,000 to $48,000 a year. Well, the corporate sector is competing for our best kids coming out of school, which with higher salaries and higher ability to make significant more money in, say, 3 or 4 years, where teachers get about $1,000 raise a year. So I want to increase that salary across the board $5,000. I tried to do this, or a plan like this, similar to this, 2 years ago, but we didn't have the money to pay for it then. And so now, we wanted to work with the school districts to let them focus more on teachers, because teachers, we spent $60 billion last year on education in Texas. Teachers only get about 1 out of every $3. They get about $18 billion of the 60, plus their benefits are about $22 billion. They get a third. Teachers are the most important part of the education process next to the parent, and very often the most important, because many kids sadly don't have don't have parents at home or don't have a good situation at home, unfortunately. And so I think we need to invest in our teachers, but all these other school reforms, we need to hold our schools accountable. So we need to focus on making sure everyone is at third grade reading level. Today only 40% are in the third grade. That's very important. We need to focus on outcomes. There's some great, I want to also fund incentive plans for teachers. Dallas has a good one, for example, of taking their best teachers, paying them more to go into their toughest schools, right, and turn those schools around. They've been very successful with like a 90% success rate. So we'll work with the House. We'll see what their plan looks like. They know a little bit of our plan. I think Dan Huberty and Larry Taylor are working together. They won't be identical plans, but they're the same line. And then we'll come all together, property tax reform, teacher pay, school finance reform. In any order, they're all number one.
Right.
Okay? And make it work.
Well, we've got a couple of minutes left before Governor Greg Abbott is scheduled to join us. Got 2 more things that I want to get to on this morning. According to the Texas Tribune, Texas Senate committee voted to advance the nomination of the Texas Secretary of State. Do you think he has the votes in the full Senate to get the to be confirmed? The
Democrats have said they're not voting for him now. That means we do not have. We would need Senate votes to help make that happen. Democrat votes to help make that happen. So we'll see where that goes. I'm assuming we have all the Republican votes. I haven't checked the vote total. We're working right now. We're in the middle of referring and reading over 1,000 bills. So I can't tell you what's happening every minute, every place. I'm really working on those first three big issues.
Sure.
But we'll see what happens on the floor. But he has the votes to get, I believe, out of committee by one vote today. I think it'll be on party lines. Republicans will vote him out. Democrats will vote no.
Okay. And the other issue that I wanted to bring up, a lot of folks back home looking at Texas Tech, the Texas Tech Vet School. What are your thoughts on a Texas Tech vet school?
Ted Mitchell was here yesterday, the new chancellor of Tech, who I always tell him he reminds me, for people old enough as me who remember George Reeves as Superman, on television,
right.
And even the younger generation may remember him. I always think Ted looks a little bit like he could have been George Reeves, and I think I knew him. I've known him for years now, with the medical school. He's a great chancellor. And there's no question, and they were on the floor, they were wearing their big red sticker, we want our vet school. There's no question that this is going to be something that the legislature will decide. Texas A&M is on the other side. Texas Tech is for. The people in Amarillo have done a great job of funding, creating the funding for this, although the state still is going to have to, we have to fund it now, but once it gets rolling, you have to help get the school. So there will be some state funds later, even though they build the building with local money. But it's going to be interesting to see this tug of war. It's almost like a football game. Between, in this case, two teams that are evenly matched. So right. And they're both making arguments on both sides. So we'll see how.
Do you have an opinion one way or the other?
I've told, and I think as the governor and the speaker, I don't want to speak for them, but I think our united position is, like with most things we do, even our school finance and property tax, the members, this is what you have hearings for. The members will make the final decision and move forward. I think that it's going to be a very interesting outcome. Right now, I will tell you, I think the momentum is with Tech right now. I mean, that's just how I see it today.
Right.
But we're a long way from finished.
Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, appreciate
Thank you, Chad,
your time.
Always.